All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Modern Day Overthinker podcast. Today's guest is holistic wellness coach Karen Ann Canham. Karen spent over a decade building her coaching practice on the side while climbing the corporate ladder until she finally left her 10-year corporate career to go full-time helping high-achieving, highly sensitive people break free from burnout and perfectionism. She openly shares her journey through a severe eating disorder, residential treatment in 2012, and how that experience eventually led her to somatic experiencing, parts work therapy, and nervous system regulation, the exact tools she now uses with her clients. I learned a lot, still learning a lot. Gonna have to listen to this again. There's so much to learn in this episode. When it comes to somatic experiencing, parts work therapy, and nervous system regulation. Just a lot to take in, a lot to learn about. Love learning new stuff when it comes to mental health, as you have probably figured out by me hosting this show. This is episode number 98. So grab your headphones. That's what my AI says grab your headphones. Let's dive in with Karen Ann Canham. Well, I'm not going to say that for the full intro. I'm going to say this episode was very educational, and we'll continue to learn more about this and dive deeper into it. And I am really glad that Karen took the time to share with us her approach. And also we, of course, talked about the difference between coaching and therapy. So without further ado, this is episode number 98 of the Modern Day Overthinker podcast with Karen Canham. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Modern Day Overthinker podcast. My name is Colin and I'm your host. Today's episode is with Karen Canham. Karen, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Colin?
I'm doing well. It's the weekend, so I can't complain.
Mm-hmm.
You're in Fort Myers, Florida, so the weather's probably a little bit better there. We're actually getting weird weather in Iowa. It's actually supposed to be 70 today, which doesn't make any sense at all.
That's nice.
It is nice. So yeah, after this, I'm definitely gonna go outside and take advantage of that before it gets freezing cold here.
Yeah,
But
it's pretty perfect in Fort Myers right now. 80 and sunny.
yeah, can't complain there. You get a lot of rain there though, don't you?
We get a lot of rain in the summertime, but we're entering our dry season now, so we'll have lots of blue skies.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, my listeners don't want to hear about the weather, so we'll go and switch it up and get started and have you do a short intro about what it is you do. You're wellness coach. I see you've been in the industry for a while, and you have some specific things that you focus on, but kind of wanted to give you the floor for a second just to introduce yourself and let people know what it is you do and who you kind of focus on coaching and what you kind of focus on coaching.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. So I'll give you a little bit of background on my story. Yes, I've been in wellness for quite some time. I didn't take my practice full time until recently. So I had this wellness business on the side while working my corporate job for many, many years. And my journey really started when I was a kid. I struggled with an eating disorder. I did not get help for that until I was an adult. And that treatment center that I went to was really helpful in my whole process of becoming holistically well. There was still something, though, that was missing for me. And that missing piece was kind of there's still this internal feeling of feeling stuck, of feeling like I was really pushing through a lot and then collapsing. And so along the way, I found somatic work and parts work therapy, which really allowed me to release old patterns and have awareness of what those patterns were, and to be able to come into a place where I was living in empowerment and the outside world wasn't affecting me as much. So now what I focus in on is mainly these three things, which are neuroeducation, the somatic experiencing, and then the parts work therapy with my clients. I do work with individuals and I work with organizations as well. Most of my clients are women as well, just like your podcast listeners. Colin and I touched on this a little bit before we started recording, is that uh, we're really trying to pull those men into this mental health
We
space.
sure are. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say most of the women, most of the people that I work with are women. However, I have had a experience recently where I got to work with an organization that was all men, and that was really interesting and exciting and challenging. And yeah, most of the people that find me are in that area of 25 to 40 as well. And they're people that growth is very important to them. They know that there's a lot more to life in the way that they're living it. They like to learn, and they really are people who tend to be a little bit more sensitive, attuned to emotions and other people's emotions, and really want to be able to learn how to utilize that and move through their life in a way that is more peaceful.
Yeah. So I want to start out by kind of explaining a couple of the techniques that you work with, and starting with somatic experiencing. Before I was introduced to you, I had never even heard those two words. So I want to get an explanation, not only for me personally, for me to learn, but for my listeners to learn what that is and how that kind of works and what it tackles. I did a little bit of research, but I kind of want to hear your explanation on it. Explain it to me like I'm five.
Yeah, I'll do my best. So, somatic experiencing is what we call a bottom up experience. And what I mean by that is a lot of the work that's out there right now in the wellness space is really focusing on your mind. And which is great. And there's a lot that we can do with the mind. However, we have what's called a vagus nerve that's attached to the bottom of our brain, and it runs through all the way into our belly and hits almost every major organ. And that's like a loop. That nerve that goes through us is like a loop communicating
Yeah.
with the body to the brain. And 80% of that communication is actually coming from the body up to the brain. So there's only so much that we can do in our brain to change the way that we are functioning and seeing the world. If we don't start to work on the body, then our brain is just really overriding that body and can cause more chronic conditions, chronic stress, things like that. So the somatic experiencing is all about getting into the body. And we do that with certain modalities. We can use breath work, we can use visualization, we can use grounding techniques. And there's titration that's involved because most of us have lived a life, and this is how we're taught to society, is really to override that nervous system and keep going and keep pushing through. So it can be really uncomfortable in the beginning. And so we start to work gently into the system, just feeling into maybe the sensations. We might feel tightness. We might feel like our shoulders rising. And then we can go a little bit deeper into those all five sensations that we have. What do we see visually in the body? Do we see like the actual muscle tightening in our body? Is there a color associated with it? Is there a smell associated with it? And it sounds kind of silly, but the deeper that we can understand and communicate and listen to that body starts to feel heard. And we can start to release those emotions that are stored in our body.
So who would you recommend obviously there's a variety of different reasons to do this type of therapy. Who would predominantly be the most beneficial, who would benefit the most from this type of therapy?
People who feel disconnected,
Okay.
people who feel highly anxious or depressed, people who have a hard time being in the present moment, people who are overthinkers and are in their mental mind a lot, people who feel stuck, people who have chronic health conditions such as autoimmune conditions, or they can be more on the mental health side of
Mm.
things like the depression and the anxiety, gut issues. Those are all things that we know from science back that are nervous system based.
So what would you say, I've asked this to many coaches before, is one of the biggest differences between a coach and a therapist?
Yeah. A coach to me is someone who is focused on the future. A therapist to me is someone who is focused on the past. There is overlap in terms of the work that I do and I know that we're going to talk about what parts work is as well.
Mm.
But these parts of us are also in our present moment. Normally, parts work. So, parts are things that normally develop within our childhood, age 3 to 7. They don't have to, but that's kind of the normal range of when those will start to develop within us. And these parts are things like being a perfectionism, overachieving, controlling, and they manifest in us in a way to feel safe in our systems. So they are there for a reason. They're highly intelligent and they protect us. But as we enter into adulthood, they start to become a pattern that can be destructive. So instead of our adult authentic self really leading the show and coming from that place, these parts of us can take over. And that's where the problem lies. So these parts will always exist. It's just recognizing what these parts are, um, why they possibly develop, not spending too much time there, but what do we do with them now? And are they still helping us? Or is that protection piece really getting in the way of us living in the way that we want to live?
Okay. So you focus a lot on burnout and perfectionism. Is that, are those kind of the main reasons people come and see you? Obviously, depression, anxiety are very common as well. Is there a particular trend you're seeing with people coming to see you as far as like, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with this? Is there anything that's really like, wow, this is like, I'm seeing a lot of this?
Mostly what I see that people will come to me with this work is they, first of all, have done therapy in the past. They
Hmm.
may have done breath work. They've done a lot of work on themselves and they know themselves pretty well. The missing piece is that they feel like they're in a cycle, and they're oscillating between this place of being anxious, not necessarily diagnosed with anxiety, but being in a place that we call as more in a sympathetic state. So they're pushing, they're doing more, they're overriding their system. And then they're going into states of these shutdown states, which would look like more of a depression. And again, we don't have to actually call it that, but more
Hmm.
of a state where they're collapsing, they're losing their energy, they don't feel like joy anymore, they can't
Hmm.
do what they used to do. So that would be the main thing that I really see in all clients that will come to me. Now, they may not recognize that pattern when they come to me. A lot of them are like, I I'm not getting promoted at work and I don't know why. I'm
Hmm.
struggling in my relationship with my marriage and I don't know why. I'm snapping at my kids and it's just like
Hmm.
I cannot stop doing it and I don't want to be this parent. I have these chronic issues of like digestive system
Yeah.
issues or autoimmune issues going on. So there's more awareness, more on the level of what's presenting symptom-wise, but all the people that will come to me is like they're going through that place of, and I kind of like to explain it as like a stoplight. So if we're in this red place, then we're in this like total shutdown. And that can even look like in a communication sense, we can't handle it anymore. So we're not communicating with our spouse. We're not communicating at work. We're just like in our own little world trying to just get through the moment. And then as we move up into this yellow zone, we come into this zone of being in this highly energetic place, going, doing, being busy. We hear that a lot in our society is I'm busy. How are you? I've
Yeah.
been really busy. And we really want to pause and be like, well, what does that mean?
Hmm.
And is that really like a good thing on our when we look at our human experience, right? And then we talk about that stoplight and being in that green place, and that would be a place of being in that place of what we call this ventral vagal place in our nervous system of where we're grounded, we're calm, we're connected, we're conscious, we're making decisions out of clarity, not in decisions of like um, the other places of being in like a heightened state or being in a shutdown state. So that would be another thing that I see a lot of people come to me with is like they're making decisions and these decisions are starting to cause issues in their life, whether it's
Irrational.
financially or in their relationships. And these decisions that they're making are out of reactivity and they're not making them from a regulated place.
Yeah, they're just reacting, and so a lot of irrational behavior can be.
Yeah,
uh,
it can be. I would
It
call
can
it
be.
more of just eh, I like to kind of clarify like dysregulation is what I would call it. If someone is
Mhm.
dysregulated, they're in a chronic state of one of these. They're either chronically shut down, so they've been there for a long time and they're
Mhm.
presenting these symptoms that can come along with it, or they're chronically in this sympathetic state where is this like go, 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 do, do, do. But I do want to say that it's normal to be in all three of these states. It's a human experience. It's also healthy to be in all three of these states. Um, it's just a matter of recognizing where our life is, where we're leading from in those areas. And when the other word I like to use is activation. So it's normal to be activated and to be activated into one of these places. It's just what do we do with that at that time so that there's more flow of in and out of these states and there's not getting stuck in one of them.
Okay. So it sounds like a good portion of people are kind of, well, burnout, and they're at a place where they're just kind of going through the motions, and they're just like, what do I do to get out of this
Hmm.
tunnel vision focus that I got going on right now? And not a good tunnel vision focus. Sometimes that's used in a good way, but
Exactly.
I've definitely been at those points, and it's tough to get yourself out of that because it's almost like a safety mechanism, like it's what you know and what keeps you safe, I guess.
Hmm.
And a lot of people just bury things. That's kind of a societal thing that we're trying to break. Is just, burying problems, not really talking about it, just kind of just growing through it, and powering through it and seeing what happens. And that doesn't always lead to good things. Usually doesn't.
Exactly.
And another thing, yeah, what we wanted to talk about was partworks therapy. So tell me a little bit about partworks therapy and how that works and what kind of conditions or what that really helps people with.
Yeah, so parts work therapy, usually how I'll run my sessions and work with what I do with people is the neuroeducation is really important. So there's like an understanding of your own self and why we're doing the work, and it creates safety in the system to be able to do the work. And then I use those somatic experiencing to start to titrate in, to start to feel safe into your body and feel into your body and get out of your head. That next step is really to start to go into that parts work therapy. And that parts work is things that I mentioned before. So perfectionism, controlling, high achieving, hypervigilance. So all of these things that we have, again, they're not bad. They serve us in a way.
Yeah.
And it's just like, we were talking about the stoplight before. All being in all of those areas serve us in a way. It's just when we get to the point when we're in that place too much, or that part is taking over and ruling our life, that's when it becomes an issue. And that's when we need to start become really aware. And you're right when you're saying that most of society is living out of these places in this, in the shutdown place and just on autopilot, for example. And a lot of times what's underneath all of that is these protectors that have developed, or these parts of us that have developed over time, and they're running the show. So to start to uncover what those parts are, and we do this in different ways. We call it mapping our system. And then we can start to recognize not only parts in ourselves, but parts in other people. And that helps us to start to create compassion for ourselves and for other people. So a lot of the work around the parts is to release shame that we've carried around these parts that we've had for so long, and to have a better understanding of what they're doing for us, why they're there, and to create compassion for them. And then being able to recognize when they're showing up, and are they serving me right now, or is it something that I need to let go of?
Okay. Gotcha. It's a lot of, well, for lack of a better way to say it, a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the nervous system is it's so interesting to me, and there's a lot that we could talk about there. I wanted to kind of circle back to like the vagus nerve. I keep getting like targeted ads for like the vagus nerve like stimulator or like massager and things like that. Is is there anything that's like, is that kind of a gimmick, or is that like I don't know what to think about that.
They're very expensive from what I've
Yeah, I've
seen.
seen that. Yeah.
Just because of the work that I do, I've been tempted to buy one of these apparatuses just to
Just to
see.
be a guinea pig. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of research behind it, just like I'm trying to compare it to some other apparatus that we might use. I mean, we all don't need to go to the gym, right? There's all of this stuff that's out there that we have access to within ourselves.
Hmm.
So, for example, we can use our own body weight, right, to do exercises. Um, However, you have to find what works for you. And some people really enjoy going to the gym, right? So I guess I would preface it by saying that there are tools, I call them neuro tools, that we utilize, and the people that I work with as well, that stimulate that vagus nerve. And so I can show you one. And then the reason that we would use these tools is if we're in a place of either that shutdown or that hyperactivity, it's hard for us to access our body. And so whenever we come into a session, we'll recognize like where we are at on that scale, on that stoplight system. And we can utilize a neuro tool to kind of try to get us back into the center so we can move into the work. So one of the tools that I love the most is this going to be shown video wise? I'll try
Yeah.
to explain it the best I can
I
to you.
mean, most people are audio, and there's going to be a few people that watch it on video.
Yeah, one of the tools that I love the most that will stimulate your vagus nerve is if you go inside your ear with the tip of your finger, and ladies, if you have long fingernails, be careful. You really want to go to the top of the ear and where you have that circle at the top and where that skin almost feels like it starts to meet. And you'll feel a little space in there that has like a depression and it feels pretty bony. And if you start to kind of just gently go around in circles, you'll probably feel some even like cracking type of sensations. You'll start to feel right away, most of my clients and even me doing this right now, I can feel like settling in my body, like tension releasing. I can feel my breath starting to deepen and that breath, that exhale release out even
Mm.
more. So what we're doing here is it's directly affecting that vagus nerve, and we call this vagal tone, which I think is kind of silly, but these are the
Yeah.
words that they've come up with. But we can think of it in a way of just like toning our muscle. So we're toning that nerve and it's just activating it. It's waking it up. It's allowing it to be like, oh, yeah, you see me, I'm here. And that helps everything kind of like come into cohesion and feel a little bit like just centered and grounded. Another one that I really love is just turning your head to the side. So you want to slowly and gently just turn your head to the side. And then once you feel sensation in that neck area, you've gone far enough. So we don't need anything that's crazy feeling. Just when you start to feel that sensation, you can pause there. And then you want to focus in on that sensation that you're feeling. You can add even more stimulation into that vagus nerve by lifting up the gaze of your eyes and looking over your left shoulder if you're looking to the left. A lot of
Okay.
people in this place, they'll start to feel like a lot of eye fluttering. And some people will be like, I can't even do it, which is totally fine. So just listen to your body and do what you can do. And then the last one that I'll talk about is just like this ear lobe rubbing. So
Mm-hmm.
I love anything with the ears. You can take your pointer and your thumb finger and just slowly massage that lobe of your ear. You can go in circles. You can squeeze. And then again, you should just start to feel pretty much immediately like more relaxation come over you, more clarity, grounded, feeling present in the present moment.
That reminds me of Meet the Parents, by the way. That earlobe thing. I don't know if you've ever seen Meet the Parents,
Did
where
the dad do that?
the mom did it to the dad. Like somebody suggested, I don't know if it was a coach or a therapist or somebody suggested doing that to try to like get him in the moment, type of thing.
Take him out of
So,
his reactivity, yeah.
well, because the guy was super tense.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro was just like, yeah,
Yeah, I
um,
kinda remember that. I'm gonna have to look that up now.
yeah, because that's what that reminded me of. And yeah, so maybe it can be used for other reasons as well. I don't know. But yeah, it's meant to calm me down, and that guy definitely needed to calm down. So, uh, I was gonna ask you. I've asked other coaches about this as well when it comes to the mental health realm of things, like somebody with depression or anxiety or like even like suicidal ideation or anything like that.
Mhm.
Where does it, where do you usually get to the point where you're like, okay, I need you I recommend, like, this is over my, like, this is not what I should be focusing on. Like, this is out of my expertise. I'm going to revert you to, I recommend seeing a therapist. Do you run into that a lot? And how do you really gauge that? Because obviously there's like this little gray area between coaching and therapy that I've learned about from talking to different coaches and different therapists. And you know, and different coaches have different opinions on therapists and different therapists have different opinions on coaches. And I've heard both sides of it. And I think there's a space for both of you. But as far as I know, some coaches work with other therapists, like they'll have, a client that works with the therapist and also works with you. You can collaborate. Or is there situations where it's like, hey, this is really like deep mental health, like, I can't handle this. I don't feel comfortable where do you really draw that line or try to draw that line, I guess, because, it's not like black and white.
Yeah. So I believe in both. Um, therapy therapy tends to be a lot of mind work,
Hmm.
a lot of talking, which is helpful to a point. Um, and a lot of people need to do, in my opinion, need to do that type of work before they come into this type of work because they need to have some awareness of themselves. I would say when if someone so I have not I do partner with therapists and other practitioners as well. Um, some clients that I work with, they're seeing me and a therapist at the same time. Um, and if someone is working with me, which I have not had this happen, but if they are working with me and it seems like they're presenting in a way that they cannot get out of the stuckness, they cannot do the work would be a big thing. Um, I vet everyone that comes in prior, so I have a pretty good idea if they're in a place where they can do this type of work. But if they're not capable of doing this type of work, then a lot of times I would refer them to a therapist to be able to process through mentally things first before they can start to get into the body. Um, I will also say this from my experience of my own journey and what I see out there is I'm not anti-drug. I'm not
Yeah.
anti-diagnosis. I think there's a place for that for sure. But a lot of people are dysregulated. And so if we can get them in a place where they're capable of doing this work, where they feel safe enough to do this work, their system is safe enough to do this work, then there's a huge shift in the way that they show up in their lives, just the being of who they are. So again, I know that there's a lot of, like, rift between therapists
Yeah.
and coaches, and I don't feel that way at all. I think, um, I've gone through certification processes with a lot of therapists that are in that because they're starting to understand how important the nervous system work is of, like, getting into the body.
Hmm.
Um, of course, there still is that out there, and there's never going to be a place where I'm gonna clinically diagnose anyone. Obviously,
Yeah.
um, so that would be the biggest difference is that a therapist has that authority based on their credentials and their licensing. Like if they can do that with someone. Um, so I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
I think obviously if someone is suicidal or homicidal or they're um, in this, s- they wouldn't be able to do this type of work if they were in a place of like they really like I wouldn't be capable of helping them
Hmm.
because this is such a it's a you have to have enough stability, of enough safety in your body, in your present state to be able to go into your body and really feel.
Yeah. You got to be at a certain level and a certain mindset.
Mhm.
Sounds
Yeah.
like when it comes to coaching, I know it's a little bit like, still a little bit like the Wild West. I mean, there's different levels to it. So, what type of certifications and, you know, learning education have you gone through to be able to be the best coach that you can be? And obviously, there's probably continuing learning as you go
Mhm.
forever, just like
Yeah.
if you were a therapist. But just curious to see how you went about it because I've heard different ways of going about, becoming a coach.
Yeah. So, my own experience is a huge piece of it.
Mm,
Um, However, it's very important to me that I I work with my clients in a way that is um not going to harm them. So there's certain things that I uphold, and I uphold these things based off of, certifications
mhm,
and credentials that I've gone through. So I am board certified through actually the same medical board that like a doctor would go through. The testing is obviously very different.
mhm,
Um, that was important to me to do. And in that schooling that I went through, I there's different routes that you can take in order to sit for that exam, but I chose to go more through the functional medicine type of way. Um, and through that experience, what they really focus in on is how to motivate your clients through change, and that change isn't linear. Using positive psychology, what your scope of practice is, that you're held to a certain standard of care with the patients that you are working with. Um, Other certifications that I've gone through is trauma informed certification. I've gone through breathwork certification, and all of these come with external hours that you need to complete. So you have to, for example, with the breathwork certification that I did, I had to do 60 hours of working with clients that was unpaid before I could even graduate from that program. Um, I've gone through a neuroscience course, which was also certified through ICF. I've gone through a somatics course, which was certified through ICF as well. ICF is just another platform. It tends to lean a little bit more towards like professional corporate side of
mhm.
more like leadership executive type
Yeah.
of training. And so that is also you sit for an exam for in order to receive those credentials as well. There's things that I've done in the past along my journey. I started in this wellness world as like personal training. So I have that certification. I have
Gotcha.
certifications in nutrition. I have certifications in energy work like Reiki. So it
Okay.
never ends.
Yeah.
And yeah, it never ends. And right
It shouldn't.
now, yeah. And you have to have continuing education. Well, I shouldn't say you have to because you're right. It is still the wild, wild west. But I do believe eventually it will be,
More regulated.
um, what'd you say?
More regulated.
Regulated. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It will be regulated. And that was one of the reasons why I took the path that I did to sit for the boards and things like that. If you want to get a job as like a coach in like a corporation, you have to have those things. You have to be either board certified through the NBHC, or you have to be certified through the ICF. Usually, is what I see. So yeah, if you have one of those credentials, then you have to do continuing education as well.
So I didn't recognize those acronyms. ICF is
International Coaching Federation. Gonna
okay.
quiz me now. The other
Sorry.
one is the National Board Certification of Health and Wellness Coaching.
Okay, gotcha. Passed the quiz. I think. I don't know. I'll have to fact check you later.
Yeah. I wish they would shorten that one. That one's like the NBCHWC.
Yeah.
It's
Oh man,
a lot.
I've learned so many acronyms from doing this podcast and I also work with health benefits so that as my full-time job and that so many acronyms. It's just like my brain is just full of acronyms at this point. Uh, so doing the coaching for a while, what made you decide to get into, you said you started out in fitness and like nutrition. What made you decide to go this route with your coaching?
So, wellness was always a thing of importance to me.
Hmm.
And it was always interesting to me. And then when I was sick with the eating disorder,
Hmm.
I didn't have the greatest experience through our health system.
Hmm.
I don't think that's true for everyone.
Yeah.
It just happened to be my experience. And again, I believe that both are necessary. Um, Western medicine is necessary along with holistic medicine as well. Um, so after I recovered from that eating disorder, I was slowly able to start getting back into exercise. And the first thing that I did was yoga, which I forgot to mention is that I am certified a yoga teacher. That was the very first thing that I did. Um, exercise wise, and then I was doing that as actually through a specific program that was a yoga therapy program. And then I decided that I wanted to get my certification just to deeper that practice. And then I started teaching, and my teaching was never about the physical practice. I wanted people to be safe, but my yoga can be like very like, this is specifically how your body needs to look in these poses, right? And for me, it was like, if it doesnn't feel good, don't do it that way. Do what
Yeah.
feels good. And my experience with the yoga therapy was more about the healing aspect of it, of being in your body, being able to feel into your body, and then creating more awareness of why you are the way you are and why you operate. So that was the way that I taught in my classes. And through that, that's when I started to have people reach out to me who were my students, come and say like, hey, I'd like to, have a conversation with you. So I started coaching at that time period. Um, and then
Mentoring.
I was slowly able to do more. I was able to get back into weightlifting. I never started to run again. I was a cross country runner. I never did that again. That was like a very triggering thing for me in high school.
Hmm.
Um, and so then yeah, then it was, I just, from my own journey, it always came back to this mental space. So even people that I worked with that were like, a lot of people, it's like, I want to look a certain way, or I want to get in shape. It usually, not usually, it always comes back to the mind, or, the nervous system. If I'm not coming from a regulated place, it's going to be hard for me to be able to make those changes to do what I want to do. And a lot of times there's a lot of layers to peel back of like what's going on to not be able to be in a place of just taking care of your body.
Yeah. There's quite the journey there. Yeah, figuring out what works for you and what made you decide or get to the point where you were like, because you did this part time for how many years?
Um,
Roughly, you don't think.
12
Okay.
roughly.
And then the last couple of years, been able to branch out. Was it just a matter of just getting enough clients and some more stability and to leave the corporate world with your, you know, set pay and your benefit package and all that good stuff? Because it's scary going out on your own, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of different aspects of, owning your own business. And that's like the biggest thing is like making that leap. So what made you confident enough to make that leap?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So I worked for this corporation in the middle of Illinois, and at that time, I wasn't trying to build a wellness business. It was just like happening. And it got to the point without me even recognizing that I was making as much money on the side as I was making in my corporate position.
Oh,
I got a promotion with this corporation and I moved to California. Um, and I'm telling you this story because there was still a lot of parts of me that were dictating the decisions that I was making. And so it got to a certain point for me as I was in California for years and working, and then, climbing up the ladder even further, and more pressure and more stress, that um, was like, what am I doing?
mm,
Um, this is not, that burnout started to come in, and then you
yeah.
relook at like what's going on here. There was a lot of things that shifted in my life at that time. So I did move away from California. I got engaged. There was a lot of changes that happened in my life. And when we moved, I did stay. I was able to work remotely and I stayed working for a while.
Hmm.
However, the more that I got into the nervous system work and the more I became aligned with like who I was,
Hmm.
I just couldn't do it anymore. It just was very clear to me like this is not who I'm supposed to be. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. It feels it doesn't feel good when you start to get to a place where you have this deep understanding of who you really are and what you should really be doing. There's a lot of just friction. And
Yeah, I get that. I get that a lot.
yeah, and even, I had, there was a lot of things that were great about where I was working and what
Oh,
I
I'm sure.
had. And my boss begged me to stay,
Yeah.
even cried. It's
Hmm.
an old, I shouldn't say that word. A man like in his 60s, is like, please don't do this. So
How long had you been with that particular company?
I had been with that company for almost 10 years.
Yeah, and that's like 20 nowadays.
Yeah. And there's still times that, it creeps back in that, man, it would be really nice to have A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Um, there's no, I think a lot of coaches will present themselves in ways of like, I've got it all figured out and everything is,
I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want,
yeah,
because that's not true. I haven't met anyone that has it all figured out.
yeah,
Not one person.
it's tough, and right now I'm going through like a change in my business of like, I'm at a crossroads of like I need to make a decision of like the direction that I want to go in. So
Mhm.
there is things that are like arising for me. The difference is I'm aware of those things that are arising and then I'm able to, make decisions from a place of my true self and not decisions based off of like reactivity.
Getting to a good level of awareness is very important. And a lot of people, I realize, it's kind of scary the amount of people that are not very aware of like just what's going on with them or just around them, or they block it out somehow. And yeah, self-awareness has helped me through a lot of different things personally. And yeah, you just hit on a buzzword there when you said awareness. So you got me thinking, well, I mean, obviously, you probably had to go through a journey of getting to a place where you're able to, like earlier you said that you were getting to a point where you're like, oh, I'm feeling like I'm getting to the burnout stage. Like you're able to recognize that. Not everybody's able to recognize that until they're like in it and they're like, oh, for lack of a better way to say it, my ass is on fire. And they're like, okay, now I got to do something, and it's like SOS, SOS. But
Hmm.
some people are able to catch it a little bit sooner. You think that's just because of the work that you've done?
Yeah, probably. I mean, yoga was a huge
Mhm.
change in my life. Um, and it just changed the way my being was and how I operated in my daily life. I do feel like the work that I do now, they're similar. It's just kind of like the parts work therapy. I will mention this is when I was in treatment, the residential treatment, and then I got out and I was,
Mhm.
still doing therapy when I got out and doing this yoga therapy. They introduced me to parts work at that time, but I wasn't in a place that I could do it. Um, so yeah, I mean, everybody's different, but yeah, for me, I do think that yoga foundation really allowed me to just be like, I had enough awareness of like what was going on in my body to know that it wasn't right.
Yeah, yeah, you can just kind of feel it creeping up.
Hmm.
So circling back to your time you said you spent in residential treatment for an eating disorder. I've been to a residential treatment before, not for an eating disorder, but something different, but it was specifically for OCD, but I've met people that have been through that process. But I've never really had a chance to really talk to anyone and ask them like what that's really like and what you were able to get out of it, because it sounds like you said you had a positive experience.
Hmm.
And what what do they try to focus on at, I mean, it may be different now since you've been there, but what did they try to focus on for you to get through it? It's not, it can't be as simple as, just a diet. There's more to it than that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Um, it was amazing. It changed my life, and I never want to go back.
Exactly. Yep. I
Yes.
feel it. I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am so grateful for the experience.
Hmm.
Um, and I say, I never want to go back because your freedom is taken away. I mean,
Yes.
it's, I don't know what it's like being in jail, and I probably shouldn't compare it to that because it's probably not as bad, but you are stripped of, your phone, communication with the outside
Yep.
world. You're on lockdown. You can't leave. That's not a place I wish for anyone to be.
Hmm.
Um, the place that I went was, the people that work there and the people that also were with me, the other people that were in the
Yeah.
treatment
Other
were,
patients.
yeah, the other patients were, I think a lot of things. Like, one thing is that the staff treated you like them. There wasn't any of like, oh, something's wrong with you or you're beneath me.
Yeah.
That was huge. That wasn't always the case of like trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And I'm using air quotes right now, along the journey of finally getting to this residential treatment center. Um, the other piece is that nothing was wrong with you, right? There was just like things that have happened, throughout your life. And it's like, we just need to get to a place of, um, understanding those things. And we go back to this awareness piece. And I want to point on like, awareness is huge. Like, we have to have the awareness first, but then what do we do with it? How do we move forward into this space of living in the way that we want to live? And that can look different for different people. My whole thing was like, I want to feel like I'm in this flow again, of like, almost like I felt like before I was 10. I can distinctly remember like my world changing at this 10-year-old mark. Um, and so, yes, there was meal planning. So
Yeah.
when usually, I don't know if all eating disorder treatments work this way, but you're on a meal plan. And so it's
Yeah.
specific what you're eating, and like, you don't get to go outside of that.
Yeah.
For me, that was really important to heal. I would have never been able to just like choose and eat. It takes time to be able to get to that place and learning. I mean, there's a lot. There's like refeeding your body is what they'll call it. So like,
Hmm.
if you're in the state of where I was, where I wasn't really eating, is your metabolism has dropped, your digestive system isn't working the way that it should. And so there's steps medically to get you there so your body can
Yeah.
start processing food again. So there's that piece of it is what they're paying attention to medically, but it's also just like this emotional and mental piece of like, you don't want to eat, you're afraid of the food, this food is bad,
Yeah.
this food is like got this, all of these rules that you've created in your head. Um, so eventually you get to the point where you can like intuitively eat, and usually that's the path is what they'll get you on, so that you get to that point of where you can really listen to your body and know what your body needs to put into it to nourish yourself. Other pieces that they would do is a lot of it was group therapy. So you're in
Hmm.
these, I mean, it's all day, every day, so
Yep.
you're in these groups with different people, and there's usually a focus of that group. I don't remember exactly what all the focuses were of the different groups, but people are sharing their stories, right? So big pieces, you don't feel alone. You
Yeah.
start to feel normal again, like, "Oh, I'm not, like, crazy, and, other people are experiencing this." It starts to really normalize your situation. Of course, there is a lot of talk about, um, your experience and why you think that this has happened, and there's usually a lot of trauma involved with eating disorder
Oh yeah.
specifically. So, those conversations take place, and that was, so this residential eating disorder treatment that I went to was in Arizona, and then I went to a step down place in California after that.
Okay.
At the step down place, I lived in an apartment, so it was better. I had more freedom, but I would still
Yeah.
go to the center every day, all day long, and it
Yep.
was more trauma focused. And so at that place, you know, you you start to also develop a lot of compassion for other people,
Hmm.
just like their experiences and the stories that they've gone through. And it's not a oh, I should be grateful because like their experience was way worse than mine.
Yeah.
I don't think that's helpful at all. It's just like this like there is a lot of pain in the world that people go through, and
Yes, there is.
unfortunately it is somewhat of like being a human. And so being able to not only, and this is down the road of like your healing and your treatment, but not only be able to start to have compassion for yourself and, this eating disorder that you've developed, and, all the decisions that you've made based around this eating disorder and how it's affected your life. But then you start to have compassion for people around you and in your environment that you feel like was a big piece of that, right? Because you start to understand like the way that they behaved was from trauma that they experienced as well. And so
Mhm.
you can have compassion for that and still understand that there's boundaries that you can have in place as well.
Mhm.
And then that you get to decide. You're in control. You have the power of how you want to lead and live your life.
So it says something about which I really relate to with the residential therapy or residential treatment is the community. You mentioned that you didn't feel alone because you're surrounded by other people who have, you know, relatively the same issues you do. And there's that one thing that you all have in common that you're there to, get better. And that's what really helped me when I was in residential treatment was, being able to be around people that actually got it and they understood like the struggle. And were you able to make any connections in there? Because there's still people that I went to treatment. I went to treatment not that long ago, so I stay in contact with a couple people. Is there anyone that you were able to connect with that you were able to stay in contact with afterwards?
Many,
Many?
many.
Y-
Yeah, and I went to treatment in 2012, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some sort of connection that's there that just is unspoken and
Yep.
doesn't go away.
Yep. You kind of have like your own little network, your own little world that you guys all understand.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's really helpful to stay connected with those people. I've tried my best. Uh yeah, because with OCD stuff, it can be it can get pretty complex. So, but also I did run into people when I was in treatment, at least three that I can think of that also had eating disorders. And it was kind of like I don't know if there was an overlap or if it was a completely separate issue, but when you were describing like you were describing like it seemed like you were describing like rituals or certain things like or certain rules that you had for yourself that
Mhm.
you didn't no one else had those rules, it was you. That's very like similar to the OCD brain
Mhm.
where you're like, I got to do things this way, or, I have to have just, I can't do this But I don't care if anybody else does that, but I can't do that because, I have this hypervigilance or whatever it is. And I thought that was interesting seeing that overlap when I was in treatment, and some of them actually went to treatment for eating disorders as well. And I've noticed that a lot with talking to different people about different mental or physical illnesses, that there's overlap in many of them, like ADHD and OCD and anxiety and depression and yeah, eating disorders. Like I see eating disorders as kind of like would you say it's like 90% of the time like a trauma response?
Yeah.
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 So it's kind of like a I don't know, say like a symptom, but like kind of like a reaction to the trauma to feel like more in control. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Exactly. hmm And
Yeah,
this goes
because
back to like the nervous system piece, right? It's a way of our body just developing. And again, a lot of this happens when we're younger in that developmental stage of like when our nervous system is developing, and it becomes just like a way without consciously even knowing that we're developing a way to feel safe.
yeah,
Yeah, so I think that's true for all of these things that people are diagnosed with.
and how long was the residential program that you were in?
Residential one, I think I was there for 2 months, and then the step down that I went to, I was there for 5 months.
Wow, that's a long step down.
Yeah,
Yeah, the one
yeah.
I did was, yeah, I was, yeah, 60 days residential, and I did 5 weeks. It wasn't called outpatient, they called it something else. But I lived in a hotel. And
Oh,
yeah, it was interesting. Yeah. Um, a hotel that was like really right down the street from where I had to go every day. And there was a Dairy Queen like 10 feet away from me, and that was dangerous. Um, but yeah, the way he talked about residential treatment being like, yeah, I was glad I did it, glad I went through it, but I never want to go back. I totally get that because I like look at it like it was like a different, like almost like it wasn't real. Like I look back at it like I know it happened. It was there, but it's like, man, you're like in a totally different world because you don't have control of your life, really. I mean, you have to be honestly not all day every day, but kind of told what to do. You need to be here, you need to be doing this, and which is well needed. Like the structure is very important, but it's weird going from, I'm somebody who lives on my own, do whatever I want, whenever I want, work from home, I have a lot of freedom, and then I go from that to I stayed at my parents' house for a little while because I was like scared to like be by myself. That was getting that bad before I went into treatment. But yeah, that freedom. And then yeah, people talk about it, and then they're like, "Oh, this food sucks," or whatever, the complaint is. But at the end of the day, like I don't regret doing what I did, but I also, when you said I don't want to go back, I was like, I totally get that. Um, and but also at the same time, if things like were to unravel and things got out of control, I wouldn't know where to go.
yeah. Yeah, for me, Thanks for saying all that. There's a couple things that
Yeah.
um, came up for me is there is still, people talk about healing, and I'm cautious to use that word
Hmm.
because I don't I don't know that I believe that we're ever completely healed.
I
Um,
agree.
it's a journey, and for me there's still things that I can see that I do that are like, "Ooh, that's that's memorable," right? And I do not wanna go back down that road.
Hmm.
And a lot of it is thinking to the point of like, yeah, I don't ever wanna go back to a treatment center. Um, however, yeah, I would take myself if I felt like that I needed to do that.
Yeah. You
Um,
gotta set your pride aside for that.
yeah. I forgot the other thing that I was gonna say with that too.
Trying to think of what
I
else
I'm
I
just
said.
saying, I guess one of the things that's coming to mind too is, like, I took myself to, um, the residential treatment center, and there were people there that did not. And I'm not saying that you
That were
can't.
forced to, kind
Yeah.
of?
Like, I'm
Okay.
not saying you can't heal, or again, here's this word heal, but I'm not saying that you can't, get benefits, but I do find in any of this type of work is you really have to be ready because
Yep.
even me who took myself there was things that I didn't wanna give up. Um,
Hmm.
I didn't want to eat certain things, or, I liked being really skinny, too skinny. There were certain things that it was like even though I knew that I needed it and I took myself there, there was still struggle and pushback of like, I don't wanna do these things because there's certain things that, like, I still wanna hold on to.
Reservations. It's what well, I just use that word because that's what we use in recovery. I've been sober for a while, and I hear reservations a lot where I don't want to give this up. I don't want to give that up. Or what if this happens? You know. So I totally get that. I didn't mean to cut you off there. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's just like a scary piece of anything, the unknown, right? And doing the type of work that people come with me to do, it's like that's part of the work is letting go of these old ways of being. And it's not easy.
Yeah, giving up that control is the toughest part. It's like you want to be able to, like me personally, the way mine works, I want to manage, fix, control everything myself. I don't. Uh, it's not really a normal thing for me to reach out and ask for help or, even like seek treatment, things like that. But I had to realize that, I had to be aware that that's what I needed at the time. Otherwise, things were gonna get worse. And I didn't want to have to keep dealing with that. It's like the pain was great enough for me to be like, okay, like we need to go to treatment. I had encouragement for my parents to go, but it was ultimately, my decision, which I think is very important. Some people obviously they can, get pushed into that area and then like, they're there for a couple weeks and are like, yeah, I'm glad I'm here. Like this is where I need to be, this is what I need to focus on. Uh, but you have to be ready. You're right for anything, and you have to be wanting to do it for yourself and not be like doing it to appease somebody else, just to get someone to stop bothering you about your problem or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of overlap with that with any type of recovery.
Mhm. Yeah. I have to find like what's that intrinsic motivation. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say again. This is such a good conversation.
Oh, we were doing well for a while there. They're good. You're good. We're getting towards the end of the end of the time here. I try to stick to about an hour anyway. I want to ask you, I've been trying to ask everybody this at the end of my shows. Um, just because there's a lot of people out there that are, struggling, going through a lot. Whether that's, dealing with having to pay for everything that's so expensive now, or, you know, mental mental illness, seasonal depression. I personally can relate to the seasonal depression thing. I go through that every year. Um, but I try to ask people, if they were to come across somebody or if somebody's listening that was really struggling and really stuck and, really at a place where they were just like, I don't really know what else to do. Uh, what would what would you tell someone in that position, like a friend of yours that says, "Hey, I'm ready to just check out, like I'm ready to just be done." Uh, what would be something you would say to someone like that? I'm putting you on the spot. I know.
Done meaning done with what?
Life.
Done with life?
Yeah, like not like yeah, like suicidal ideation, like that kind of realm.
Um, well, I would encourage them to get the help that they needed. Um, I guess depending on how severe I thought it was, I would call someone. Um, I mean, I don't think I don't have a judgment against someone making that decision about their life, but I
Hmm.
have a responsibility as the position that I'm in, and even if I didn't, that I would, um, you know, get them to where they needed to be for that help. Um, I guess that's what I was going to say before is there's a difference between having pain and suffering. We're all going to experience pain. It's part of being human. It's a part of life. And I think that that's a big part of why people get into these places that they get into is because the pain can feel uncomfortable and we're taught in society not to feel pain. And so when we
Yeah.
stuff that pain away and we don't listen to it and we keep trying to suppress it, we can get into these dangerous places. And now we're in this place of suffering. And that goes back to your question about like difference between coaching and therapy as well. I wouldn't take on a client who I felt was in a place that was really suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a level of someone that needs like clinical care. So, yeah, if someone comes to me and says, like, I'm just done, I don't want to live anymore, I mean, I would talk to them. I would have a
Of course.
conversation with them. And then I would feel it out of like, and I would encourage them to get the help that they need. And if it was so serious of where I thought they were going to be active, I mean, a lot of people say that, right? But they're not going to
Yeah.
act on it. So,
Yeah, you never know sometimes, but you gotta be cautious.
yeah, if I felt like that was a possibility, then I would call people to get them the help that they needed.
Yeah, definitely. I had to do a wellness check for somebody recently, actually. I was in a different area. So I learned this week that you can call your local 911 and be like, "Hey, I know somebody here. Can you dispatch me?" And they'll get you to the right person to talk to the right department so they can send somebody out for a wellness check. Because I was like, how am the only number I know is 911. I don't know how to reach like, this specific department. So, that's something I learned this week. But yeah, I feel that responsibility as well. Not even like necessarily. It was actually at work. I work in customer service. Uh, but I feel that responsibility just as a fellow human, just that has empathy and that understands that spot and has been in that spot in that area where it's like that's kind of what it was with treatment. It was just like there wasn't that many options left for me. Like I wasn't going to continue living the way I was living. I either had to seek help or things were going to get really bad. And
Mhm.
yeah, I'm very grateful I went to treatment. Yeah, ne also never want to go back. But yeah, it was what I needed at the time. So, and I'm glad I was aware of that. Um, but yeah, we're getting a little over time. I don't want to take up too much of your Saturday here in your 80-degree weather. Um, but I really appreciate the conversation and hopefully we can stay connected. Is there anywhere I have your Instagram, but and I'll link that in the description and your website so that people know where to find you and anything you want to plug before we wrap up here.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna have start a group in January. January 7th is the starting date for it, and it's a really good segue to come in to understand this work even more and kind of test out if it's right for you to delve in a little bit deeper. Um, so if you haven't done this type of work before, it's a really good starting place. I offer free webinars as well to get a taste into the work and what it feels like.
Okay. Yeah, that helps.